We are live with a half Irish, half Italian beauty who has worked for some of the biggest brands. She's here to tell us that it's okay to have poofy hair in high school and to, not that your hair's poofy, your hair's fabulous. My hair's poofy. That was the pre-live thing. Let's give a round of applause on the live to Courtney O'Brien.
Happy to be here. Got a lot of energy.
Yeah, I do. I eat meatballs for lunch and French fries. People are always like, you have a lot of energy. I'm like, it's not from my dad. I'm just a chubby girl who was born with an excess. So that's it. So tell me about you. What were you born like, and how did you end up in what you do, and how you are creative and pushing the, I don't know what that expression is.
Pushing the boundaries. Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries, you badass. How do you
I was born the exact same as I am now. I really have not changed at all. I mean, I was the 3-year-old that was going up and down the new neighborhood doors, knocking on them to see if they had any kids. My parents found me like a block and a half away when we moved. So very extroverted, loved to be in charge, was called bossy growing up. Right. Always knew I was going to do something that was going to be awesome, but I did not know what it was yet. I knew that I didn't know what it was yet. People I'm one of the only people that I've ever met that didn't have something they wanted to be when they grew up. I would say I worked my butt off towards some undefined goal. But it was very much like, I know it's going to be awesome, but I know that I don't know it exists yet.
And what did you study then?
Yeah, I studied government and economics and French.
Oh la la, that's strange for a Californian.
Well, I'm not from California. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York. I studied in New Hampshire. I've lived in California for the last 17 years, but by choice. Yeah, I'm not natively.
Nobody forced you to move to California, you poor refugee.
I always knew I was going to move to California too. I was on a mission since I was about 5 years old to get my family to move to California. And they're like, no, I mean, I made rudimentary PowerPoints it was unbelievable. I hope I find them someday in my parents' house.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay. So when we were hearing this, ladies, most of everyone who watches are ladies because we're kind of creating a community here. When you listen to Courtney talk, it's obvious that she was born with what we call Riz. Well, not me, the young people call it Riz, right? In Spain, we call it chispa, which is like a really fun word for charisma, right? So she was born like this. Were you always like unapologetic, like trying to force your parents to move across the country? Or did you reach some time and just like really embrace, I'm going to be different and I'm going to be the one who's knocking on doors without shame?
No, I mean, at 3 years old, I was knocking on doors without shame. So yeah, I mean, I was born that way, but obviously I, like everybody else, went through probably a time in my teens when you just want to fit in, and you have to try to figure out your own way. I kind of escaped that by just studying. So I worked my ass off toward something bigger, like I was saying pre-camera, that I didn't know existed yet. But I knew I was destined for big things. And so I wanted to make myself as able to get that as possible. So I studied like hell. I was number 3 in my class out of 500 kids. So I went to an Ivy League school, studied like hell there. So that's kind of how and a little bit of it, I think, was a defense mechanism. Like, I know I can excel at this. I'm just going to let these high school dramatics play out around me. And I'm just going to focus on my next stage in life. I also sang in high school. That was my big thing. I was a member of like the a cappella group that traveled around. So I did have fun in high school. I wouldn't do it different, but it definitely set me up for success later. But I don't think I was like fully embracing my eccentricity during that period.
So when you have to, well, the story of Courtney, those of you watching, is I saw her on Richard Moore's, I don't know if it was called branding session, but it was a session on how to
sell.
Yeah. And I just thought, this woman, like, you went into Coca Cola. Now you work for yourself because, of course, women like you end up working for themselves because you got everything that it takes, right? So Okay, so got called into Coca Cola. Can you tell us a little bit of that story? And you told me in our little chat that like even Coca Cola, and you told everyone in the Richer More thing that Coca Cola like hires great people apparently, and then even their products fail. So it's 7 out of 10 products fail, even from the biggest names in the industry.
Yes.
What?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I joined Coca Cola. I started out with Evian, Danone, which is large company internationally. And then in the US, Coke did a distribution deal with them. And so we moved to become part of Coke in Atlanta in the headquarters. And about 4 years in, I moved to launch Coke Zero in the US after I finished up on Evian. And Coke Zero was not expected to be a big success in the US. Like it was just one of many, many things that they were throwing against the wall. It was a time of high innovation, spaghetti at the wall sort of thing.
Okay.
And a lot of the rest of them are not around. Tab Energy, Coke Black, Diet Coke Plus. Those were all contemporaries of Coke Zero in the US, and none of them are around anymore. So I was advised that it was kind of a risky job to take because I'd probably spend a couple of years just justifying why it didn't work and cleaning it up. But I didn't look at it that way. And I was determined to make it a success, like my life depended on it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things fail. I had taken over, I was given this brand by the innovation team that had invented it. Like there was no brand person before me, but they did come up with a marketing and launch plan and everything. And I was reading it when I had taken the job and I'm like, this is absolutely awful. The product makes sense. The insight makes sense. They had invented a new sweetener that didn't exist back when Diet Coke was invented. So it tastes a lot more like Coke. And so great. 0 calories. But the launch plan was just, it did not go with it. They were targeting like teenagers. And back then, teenagers did not give a shit about calories. Men, no. They were targeting college kids. I'm like, there is no college kid that's worrying about calories. Men.
So this person who was hired before you, when they hired you, like when you say it like that, it's like obviously this person, like you can't name names.
It wasn't one person, and I don't even remember who was on. It was their team that brings things to market, and they had put it into market. They had like gotten the sweetener. They did the can design. They put it in, and now I was their first marketing person. But they have to put some kind of plan together. I couldn't remotely remember who was on this team. It was a broader team that just works for them permanently. So they had worked on a bunch of other things too, but I'm like, this does not go with this. This is not the best way in to selling this product. So I asked for and was granted, I don't know why in retrospect, like a couple months to completely redo it.
Okay.
And then relaunch it. And I did.
This is the bold, right? It's like, okay, me, Coca Cola, I would never on earth, like, of course, I'm not a branding specialist, right? But it's like, even if I'm a professional speaker, right? So like Coca Cola's professional speaker that tours the world and is like in charge of that, I would never like confront them and be like, no, like that boldness that you have to dare know that you can find a better way to sell the product.
Yeah.
That energy is very rare because it takes, what does it take? Does it take a strong?
It takes a lot of confidence, I think.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've always had.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it's the same thing kind of on LinkedIn. I'm pretty outspoken on LinkedIn. And I don't only say positive things. I really try to be respectful. But I'm the one that's like, I don't get it. Explain this more. Like, why does... And so that's inviting people to be like, attack you, really, to put yourself out there like that. Just like if that had failed at Coke, it would have been 100% my fault because I'm the one that said, time out, let's redo this, and then redid it. It's not like I could have blamed the guy before me by executing what was given to me.
But the ones that did it before you, were they fired when you came up with a kick-ass idea and they should have hired you?
No, because their job was different. Their job was to keep launching products. keep creating and launching products. And they came up with like an introductory marketing plan. And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I've got to redo this.
It wasn't expected to be that great because
right.
Okay, so they need you, and they always hire someone like you at that stage.
Pretty much. I mean, we're all permanent employees of Coke. So, I joined Coke at that time. I just happened to join at that time.
Yeah.
But they could have just as easily moved somebody from a different brand to do that launch. Okay. That was previously working on Sprite. People stay there for decades and work on all different things.
Yeah. So would you have, I've never worked in like the big, and that's like one of the biggest companies in the world. Would you have gotten fired, or like what would have happened if it wouldn't have gone well? Like, can you predict?
I don't know that I would have gotten fired, but I would not have set myself up on a good reputation for my first foray at Coke in my first couple months as an employee.
Yeah. But you think Coke makes all these things didn't work. Diet
Coke.
Oh
yeah.
So who got fired for that? Or is that just innovation?
Nobody really gets fired for that unless you're like doing something egregious. Or, I mean, most companies know that nobody can predict the outcome. All you can do is, it's not like we are rogue out there just doing stuff with no approval either, right? Like, we're having to get our bosses. I brought the plan to my boss's boss and I'm like, here's what I want to do. And he signed off on it, right? So if it had failed, I would have ruined my reputation for a while, but I wouldn't have gotten fired. And he probably wouldn't have even gotten fired because also there's so many things you could have blamed it on. Like all the other products failed entirely. Who knows if they could have been saved if they'd had a better, I don't know. There's product market fit, there's marketing, there's targeting, there's the pack. There's so many different things you could blame it on if something goes wrong.
I love that. I'm a therapist. So like, there's so many people to blame. It's never,
Oh yeah. The success has many fathers and failures an orphan. Yeah.
Okay. So the big industries fail all the time. People get fired about it. That's what innovation is. Fail fast. I kind of get that idea. I teach improv and adaptability intelligence. So like, I understand that. But when it's you as a woman, as an entrepreneur, going against like the dudes in Coca Cola suits, I'm sure they all wear red suits at the top, right? Instead of smoking a cigar. And when you're an entrepreneur, can you take those risks? Because if your reputation goes down, or do most people just stay on the safer side and
yes,
do anything big?
Totally. That's exactly right. And that's what I think so many big companies fail because of. Because those people are not, there's no incentive. I've gotten in debates with people that I've worked with over the years, because I've always worked for large companies. And so, some very savvy people that managed to stay there for decades. And I did stay there for decades too. Like, why would you take that risk? You're not incentivized to do that. It's not like you're getting a percentage of its success. All you can do is fail or whatever. Right. I mean, that's why more people don't take risks that work at large companies. There's nothing really in it for them and a lot of potential downside.
So if you would look at, in your experience of meeting tons of people in your life, I'm sure, since you talk to neighbors all the time.
I do.
I bet you borrow sugar from your neighbors downstairs, right? And we all.
I talk to everybody that I see out in life. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. So out of these millions of people that you've been lucky enough to talk to, would you say like you see a real difference between corporate people and entrepreneur startup energy? And which one do you think, or what advice do you have for women out there, entrepreneurs who mostly listen to my show?
Yeah.
How do you be unapologetic? How do you be bold without scaring the shit out of you, right?
Yeah, and it is scary. I don't know. The people that are in corporate happen to have made the choices that ended up in corporate. I don't know if there's different DNA and that they were born different, right? I probably have a much more entrepreneurial DNA than your average person that ends up working in corporate for 25 years. But my circumstances led me to that. I always wanted to be very educated and learn from the best. That was a huge priority of mine. It still is. So even though I've got kind of this wild entrepreneurial energy, I also have this desire to learn. So that's why I wanted to work with the best and learn from the best. I had an opportunity to be CMO of a small startup decades ago. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing enough yet. No, like I mean, maybe I could figure it out, but I want to learn more. I'm still at that learning phase in my career.
Okay.
So that kind of is partly me. So I think
that's humility, isn't it?
I think so. And also really valuing, I have I don't know if you've taken any like the personality tests and stuff, but I have a very high education and learner score. So I'm constantly
your Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finder is the one that I'm specifically thinking of.
Okay, that one. I like Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
Okay.
ENTJ.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Of course.
Ian. I'm Ian, but then the other, I'm a T as well, but then I'm the P.
You're okay, ENTP.
We're pretty similar. So I'm always attracted to, likes like.
Yeah.
Which is why that in the branding industry, like people buy because they want to look like or be like that person. That's in the app,
absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So we usually gravitate towards people that we find cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would also say, because I don't feel like I thoroughly answered your question, I would also say that one of the reasons I stayed, even though I had an entrepreneurial personality with corporate so long, is because I was the breadwinner for a family of 5. Ooh. And so I couldn't just, that was very risky. Maybe back in my 20s or 30s, you could take more risk. But, I always had a lot of school debt, even back then, because of the learner part of me. I always, and I was always the one carrying the load. So I ended up being this entrepreneurial crazy person in corporate for 25 years, which you can imagine was a little bit of an interesting fit. I always had a certain reputation. I was put in part of the innovation department. There's no wondering why, right? Yeah. But I also blended in enough and had enough leadership skills to manage a portfolio of 25 brands at the end, and my results kind of spoke for themselves. I had a large team. So I think I do think though, to your question about your people listening that have kind of like that entrepreneurial energy and how do you do that? I got let go from corporate at the end, and thank God, because I don't know that I ever, with my motherly responsibilities, would have been able to I would have seen that as such a selfish step. I'm going to go ahead and take this huge risk for our family because I just feel unfulfilled and I feel like I have to do this. You have so much load on you by the time you're in like your late 40s. And it freed me to do what I needed to do for a long time.
Ooh, goosebumps.
Yeah, but I think there's no easy answer.
Yeah. I get pretty pissed off at like life coaches. I live in Barcelona. Every second person's a life coach, right?
Really?
Oh yeah, like because we don't speak the languages good enough. So what can you be? An English teacher or a struggling life coach, right? Or trying to be actor, right? We're like LA over here. And they're always like, follow your dream. And I'm like, oh, okay. But if you have 4 kids, like you can't, this advice. And then when it gets kind of messy because it's like, when do you apologize for being selfish? Or when is it what this soul and this body has come to be in this life?
In one life.
Apologize to your kids because this year you don't get new iPhones, kids, because mama's doing what mama was born to do. Do you apologize to your kids because they have to lower their standards? A lot of moms would, because they'd apologize to their friends. They can't go out anymore. Like there's no apologizing for like you and what you need to do.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say to those women is watch your apologies. They're probably not necessary to entitled teenage kids, no offense. But
it's I am so guilty of this, but like I would do anything, spend any amount of money and go out of my way for things my kids need. But like if it's something that mama needs, it's still so easy to be like, I'll just suck it up. But your kids are watching. My 14-year-old who wants all the material things went over to his friend's house, and his friend's mom texted me. She's like, I don't know if you know how proud he is of you.
Oh,
like he is just telling me all about how you started your own business and you were like scared and he was scared, but like you're doing it well and he is so proud of you. Just so you know, he's watching.
Wow.
That meant so much.
Oh, goosebumps again. Beautiful. And thank you for admitting that you're scared. It's like sometimes I look up at corporate women that like, wow, 25 years, like I don't have the personality, and I don't have enough kids, like I don't have any to be responsible enough to like sacrifice myself. I'm one of those selfish girls. And it's like, do we apologize for being selfish? Do we apologize for our ENTs? You know? Like, is that how we were born? And do we apologize for that? Or only when we really hurt people, then we apologize?
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't apologize for knowing who you are and that you're going to do big things. It's not, you know, so it's interesting for bigger personalities. I think I often feel like selfish or like, oh, like they must be jealous because I'm not apologizing for a lot of stuff, but should I be? Am I too, you know, powerful women?
Yes. And men have interesting perceptions of powerful women too, right? Like, so on LinkedIn and stuff, so many of them are men, the ones that are speaking anyway, the ones that are speaking up. You know, it's the stat is something like 1 billion users worldwide and 1% actually post. So the people in my feed are so many men, just because I think they have more, they've been told by the world their whole lives, they have more, you know, they have a right to speak up. So I feel definitely that there is pushback sometimes toward when strong women say things.
I have a secret. I unfollowed every single man on LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh, you only follow women?
So I'm like, hey, if a man can do that, there's a woman who can do it. So study from those you want to become like. And the way that men teach public speaking and the way they talk, if a woman did that, she'd have no friends. It would just be off the charts arrogant. We cannot copy white 50-year-old men. We can copy we can copy any woman probably of the world, but not that one because they're so entitled to some, they're entitled. So it's like, you got to do your own thing and not apologize that, hey, it's just not working for me anymore, Bob.
Yeah.
Mr. Bob Smith. Hashtag follow yourself, right? Create your own content, create your own life, right?
Yes. And so many people are afraid to do that because they don't trust their voice enough and you're putting yourself out there, right?
Well, I know you have a thing in 4 minutes. So is there anything you'd want to share about what you've been doing, or if you're looking for new clients, maybe Pepsi?
Sure.
No, just joking.
No, I don't. I will not work for Pepsi. That Coke blood runs thick. So now I run a consultancy for brands that want to be better than the average. You know, a huge percentage, especially if beverage brands fail. Very low cost to entry. Everybody and their mom wants a drink. Everybody thinks they could start a drink, but very high cost to scale. And there's actual skill involved. So, you know, I created a company called the Outlier Initiative because the brands that I've worked with have become outliers, and I don't think it's an accident. And I've got, you know, certain point of view on how to connect with consumers. A lot of it is positioning work. So I do that for all sorts of beverage brands, non-alcoholic, alcoholic. I even work in other categories. But if anybody wants to connect, I'm on LinkedIn regularly or theoutlierinitiative.com.
Awesome. I wish I was a cold beverage so that I could have your wisdom. Thanks. Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks, Jessica.
Good day.
You too. Later. Bye.